An explosion ripped through the ocean. The Shahed Soleimani escort ship wasn't hit, it was split in two from beneath the water's surface. In just 19 seconds, this $120 million vessel vanished completely into the darkness of the seabed. There was no radar warning, no visible enemy, only the twisting of metal, followed by a profound silence returning to the waves. The Virginia-class submarine behind the strike was positioned just 2 meters away, stealthy and deadly. This wasn't a warning shot, it was total annihilation. Within the next 12 minutes, the entire IRGC Navy would officially become a relic of the past. Welcome to Strategic Horizon, where we explore the cutting edge of global defense. You're about to witness how the speed of information has redefined modern warfare, turning a 20-year military investment into scrap in mere minutes. 64 kilometers to the east, the IRNS Shahed Bagheri, Iran's first-ever naval drone carrier, was frantically preparing a swarm. Its deck was a chaotic hive of activity, crowded with over 50 Shahed 136 drones, their small engines buzzing with a high-pitched whine. The Iranian commanders believed they held the initiative, confident their asymmetric carrier, a converted merchant ship transformed into a mobile fortress, could hold the Strait of Hormuz hostage. High above them, a KH-11 reconnaissance satellite locked its infrared sensors onto the heat bloom emanating from the Bagheri's engines. In just 0.8 seconds, that data was processed and beamed to an E-2D Hawkeye circling 200 meters away. The Hawkeye operator didn't need to utter a word over the radio. He simply clicked a target icon on a glass screen, and the integrated kill chain took over. At 2:18, a pair of F-35C Lightning IIs launched from the USS Abraham Lincoln released 4 AGM-158 LRASM missiles. These aren't merely missiles, they are $3 million stealth drones with a singular, violent purpose. The LRASMs dropped to just 4.5 meters above the waves, masking themselves in the sea spray to stay below the carrier's radar horizon. They didn't fly in a straight line. They used onboard AI to communicate with each other, coordinating their arrival like a pack of wolves. The first LRASM punched through the Bagheri's hangar door at 1,046 kilometers per hour. The sheer kinetic energy alone turned the ship's internal structure into a blender of shrapnel. A split second later, the second and third missiles followed through the exact same hole. Then, the Bagheri erupted into a volcano. 113,562 liters of high-octane drone fuel and 2 tons of high explosives in the drone magazines ignited simultaneously. The thermal bloom was so intense that weather satellites over the equator registered a massive flare in the Indian Ocean. The ship didn't just sink, it disintegrated. The Shahed drones on deck, intended as instruments of terror, became thousands of pieces of burning debris raining down into the sea. In the span of 4 minutes, Iran's dream of naval drone dominance was erased. The IRGC attempted to retaliate from the mainland. On the rugged, sun-scorched coast near Jask, 6 mobile ballistic missile launchers, known as the Archers, emerged from their hardened limestone tunnels. The crews worked with frantic speed, prepping Fateh 110 missiles to launch at the American carrier strike group. They were trained to fire and disappear in under 5 minutes. They were 5 minutes too slow. The moment the hangar doors opened, the U.S. network identified the change in terrain. This is where the network becomes a hunter. The GPS coordinates were instantly pushed to a HIMARS battery stationed on a small, nondescript island 300 meters away. The U.S. Army didn't use standard rockets. They used the PRSM, the Precision Strike Missile. The PRSM doesn't arc through the sky like a traditional rocket. It dives at the Earth at over 6,196 kilometers per hour. That's Mach 5. At that speed, the air around the missile turns into a white-hot sheaf of ionized gas. It moves so fast that the Iranian S-300 air defense systems didn't even trigger an alarm. The radar computers, designed for the threats of the last decade, simply couldn't process a target moving at 1.6 kilometers every single second. The first PRSM hit the lead launcher with the force of a small meteor. There was no need for a massive explosive warhead. The kinetic energy of a 1,134 kilogram object moving at 6,196 kilometers per hour is enough to vaporize an 18-ton truck and flip nearby armored vehicles like toys. The secondary explosions from the Iranian missiles fueled the fire, turning the launch site into a cratered wasteland. 6 launchers appeared. 6 minutes later, all 6 were nothing but scorched earth. No American pilots were at risk. No special forces were on the ground. Just a hammer falling from the edge of space, delivered with surgical precision. Desperation took hold at the IRGC regional headquarters. They realized their primary assets were being picked off like targets in a shooting gallery. They launched their final option, a saturation swarm of 2,000 cheap drones and 300 cruise missiles. It was a $60 million wave of suicide robots, a massive medal designed to overwhelm the Aegis destroyers by sheer volume. The Iranians expected a duel. Instead, they hit a wall of digital noise. An EA-18G Growler, circling at 9,144 meters, activated its jamming pods. This wasn't just static, this was a high-fidelity electronic assault. The Growler identified the specific frequencies the Iranian drones used for GPS and command links and flooded them with ghost data. On the Iranian controller screens, the drones started flying in erratic circles. Some turned around and headed back toward the Iranian coast, their logic boards fried. Others simply stalled and fell into the ocean like thousands of expensive lead weights. This is the electronic shroud. You cannot fight a target you cannot see, and you cannot win a war if your weapons forget who they are supposed to hit. For the drones that managed to bypass the jamming, the USS Leon was waiting. The ship didn't waste its $2 million missiles on $8,000 drones. That's bad math. Instead, it used the Mark 100 1057mm gun and the CRAM system. The Mark 110 fires 220 rounds per minute. Each round is a programmable smart shell that explodes in a cloud of tungsten pellets directly in the flight path of the drones. It's like a giant, high-tech shotgun. In the Combat Information Center of the Leon, the atmosphere was clinical. The tactical action officer watched as the Aegis system automatically prioritized and engaged targets. 14 drones down, 22 down, 50 down. The swarm wasn't a threat, it was a cleanup operation. Every Iranian drone that hit the water was a testament to the fact that volume cannot beat a superior network. To understand why this 12-minute window was so lopsided, you have to look past the explosions and focus on the kill chain. In modern warfare, the platform that fires the weapon is often the least important part of the equation. This was a system of systems engagement, a capability that no other military on the planet possesses in an integrated form. It begins 500 meters up with the KH-11 satellite. This isn't just a camera, it's a data vacuum. It scans the electromagnetic spectrum, picking up the unique fingerprint of Iranian radar and communications. When it finds a target, it doesn't just take a picture, it generates a fire control quality coordinate. That data is encrypted and beamed to a ground station in the US, which then bounces it back to the E-2D Hawkeye. The Hawkeye acts as the quarterback. It takes the God's eye view from the satellite and merges it with its own radar data and the sonar data from the Virginia-class submarine. This creates the common tactical picture. Through the cooperative engagement capability, every ship and plane in the theater sees exactly what everyone else sees. This is why the F-35s could stay 100 kilometers away with their own radars turned off. They weren't flying blind. They were seeing through the eyes of a satellite and a submarine. When the pilot pulled the trigger, he wasn't just launching a missile, he was activating a global network. This level of coordination is what makes U.S. power inevitable. It reduces the fog of war for the Americans while turning the environment into a total blackout for the enemy. While the Iranians were trying to figure out where the first shot came from, The network had already calculated the solution for the 10th. War, at its most brutal level, is a game of return on investment. Iran spent 20 years and billions of dollars building its asymmetric navy, a force designed to bleed the West through 1,000 small cuts. In 12 minutes of integrated warfare, that entire 20-year investment was liquidated. The U.S. Navy didn't lose a single sailor. They didn't lose a single airframe. They spent perhaps $30 million in munitions to destroy $600 million in Iranian assets. But the real cost isn't measured in dollars. This operation was named Epic Fury for a reason. It was the clinical, calculated response to the loss of 4 American service members who were killed in a cowardly drone strike weeks earlier. We remember their names: Captain Cody Cork, age 35, Sergeant First Class Nicole A. Moore, age 39, Sergeant First Class Noah Tatchins, age 42, and Sergeant Declan Cody, who was only 20 years old. Declan hadn't even reached his 21st birthday. He was a kid from Des Moines with a bright future, taken out by a cheap drone made in a factory in Isfahan. The 12 minutes of obliteration the world just witnessed was a message to the people who sent that drone. It was a demonstration that the U.S. military is no longer interested in de-escalation or trading punches. The era of the proportional response is dead. We have entered the era of overwhelming erasure. The technology we saw, the Mark 48 torpedoes, the LRASMs, the PRSMs, these are not just tools of destruction, they are instruments of policy. They prove that the speed of information is now the most vital resource on the battlefield. The Iranian regime thought they could use cheap tech to challenge a superpower. They forgot that the superpower is the one that invented the technology in the first place. As the smoke cleared over the North Indian Ocean, the strategic map of the Middle East had been fundamentally rewritten. The IRGC Navy, once a source of pride for the regime, had been reduced to a coastal patrol force. Their drone carrier was a charred wreck. Their most advanced corvette was a memory. Their land-based launchers were nothing but scrap metal. The checkmate was complete. Trillions of dollars in global trade continue to flow through the Strait of Hormuz today because the world saw what happens when a professional, networked force decides to stop playing defense. The price of oil didn't spike, it stabilized. Why? Because the market realized that the U.S. Navy isn't just protecting ships, it is protecting the very concept of international order. For the analysts in Washington and the sailors in the Indian Ocean, last night wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about proving that the kill chain is unbreakable. It proved that a satellite launched in California can communicate with a submarine built in Virginia to help a pilot from Texas hit a target in Iran with zero margin for error. The Iranian leadership now faces a terrifying reality. They are fighting an opponent who treats their game-changing weapons as simple target practice. Every time they fire, they reveal their position. Every time they move, they are tracked. In modern warfare, the winner isn't the one with the biggest ego, it's the one with the fastest data. Last night, the American data was flawless. The lesson for any adversary is simple. Never enter a tech war with a force that defined the rules of the game. If you challenge the global network, you don't just face a ship or a plane. You face the collective power of the most advanced military machine ever conceived by man. And as we saw last night, that machine does not miss. 12 minutes. That's all it took to reset the balance of power. In the time it takes to grab a cup of coffee, an entire naval strategy was dismantled. This is the reality of the 21st century battlefield. It is fast, it is silent, and it is absolute. But as we marvel at the Mach 5 missiles and the stealth submarines, we must never forget the professionals behind the screens, the sailors in the CIC, the pilots in the cockpits, and the technicians in the satellite hubs. They are the true strength of the American war machine. The technology is just the tool. The training and discipline are the weapon. What part of this 12-minute strike was the most shocking to you? Was it the physics of the underkeel torpedo blast, or the sheer speed of the PRSM missiles falling from space? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We read your tactical analyses to see how you view the future of global conflict.